You know, when you hear the words Starbucks and data breach in the same sentence, your mind probably jumps to customer accounts, right? Maybe credit cards or rewards points. But this time, it was different. The target wasn't us, the customers. It was the very people behind the counter, the ones making our coffee. So let's break down this heist that targeted Starbucks' own employees.
Now, this wasn't some massive spray and pray kind of attack. It was precise. The final count of compromised accounts was 889. That's 889 Starbucks partners, as they call them, whose most sensitive personal information was suddenly out in the open. You have to remember, every single one of those numbers is a real person, now facing a very real risk.
And this is where it gets really serious. The hackers weren't just after logins for an internal website. Nope, they were aiming for the crown jewels, social security numbers. So the huge question we're going to unpack is, how on earth did they manage to pull that off?
Well, the answer is actually one of the oldest tricks in the digital playbook: phishing. The attackers didn't have to kick down any digital doors or bypass complex firewalls because they tricked the employees into holding the door wide open for them. So, just so we're all on the same page, what exactly is phishing? Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a digital masquerade ball. An attacker puts on a mask, pretending to be someone you trust. Could be your bank, a colleague, or in this case, your employer. And their goal is to trick you into handing over the keys to the kingdom, your password or other secret info. And for this attack, it was a pretty classic four-step move. First, the hackers built a fake website that looked exactly like the real Starbucks employee portal. Super convincing. Step 2, they sent a link to that bogus site to the employees. Step 3, an employee clicks the link, thinks, yep, this looks right, and enters their real username and password. And boom. Step 4, the hackers snatch those credentials right out of the air. It's simple, but it is devastatingly effective.
So why this portal? Why go to all the trouble to clone Partner Central? Because it was the jackpot. This wasn't just some employee message board. It was the central hub for everything. HR files, benefits information, and most critically, all that sensitive personal and financial data. It was a one-stop shop for identity theft.
Okay, so we know how they got in, but the next big question is, for how long did they have access? This wasn't a quick smash and grab. The breach actually unfolded over the course of several weeks, which is pretty scary when you think about it.
This timeline really tells a story, and it reveals some pretty significant delays. Look at this. The hackers first got in on January 19th. But what's really alarming is that Starbucks didn't even realize what was happening until February 6th. That's almost 3 full weeks of undetected access. Then it took another 5 days just to kick the attackers out. And the employees themselves? They weren't told their data was stolen for another whole month after that.
So, with the threat finally neutralized, Starbucks had to shift gears into full-on damage control mode. So what exactly did they do? And how do you even begin to communicate this to the almost 900 employees whose lives were just turned upside down?
The very first thing Starbucks did, and this was absolutely crucial, was to draw a clear line in the sand. They made it known that the 889 people affected were all employees. The company moved fast to tell the public that not a single customer's data was involved in this incident.
And here's the official statement they released. Now, the wording is always chosen so carefully in these things. They said employees inadvertently interacted with deceptive websites, which kind of puts a little bit of the responsibility on the user, right? They also made sure to say the issue was quickly resolved and repeated that key point: no impact on customer data.
So what did they actually do to clean up the mess? Well, they pretty much followed the standard playbook for a data breach response. First, you get law enforcement involved. Then you immediately work on hardening your own security systems. And for the victims, you roll out a support plan. In this case, telling them to watch their bank accounts like a hawk and offering 2 years of free credit monitoring to help them defend against identity theft.
So we've gone through the what, the how, and the when. But now let's talk about the why. Why is a breach that affected fewer than 900 people actually such a big deal? Well, the answer isn't in the number of people, it's in the type of data that was stolen.
This wasn't a list of email addresses or favorite coffee orders. What you're looking at here is a complete identity theft toolkit. Full names, social security numbers, bank account details. With this information, a criminal has literally everything they need to impersonate someone, open new lines of credit, file fake tax returns. The damage can be absolutely devastating.
And that's really the core takeaway here. When we hear about data breaches, we often think about customer data. But an internal breach that targets employees can be so much more severe for the people involved. This wasn't about loyalty points. It was about compromising the very foundation of nearly 900 people's financial and personal lives.
And that brings us right back to the beginning, to a final, really important question. This whole mess, affecting all these people, it started with one single click on a link to a fake website. It's just a powerful reminder that sometimes a company's billion-dollar security system is only as strong as a single, cautious click from one person. So you have to ask yourself, could you spot the fake?